Frequency Podcast Network. Stories that matter, podcasts that resonate.
Every economist on edge.
High living costs.
The real estate market is showing
An erosion.
Canada's economic struggles.
Value of the loonie against the greenback. And rising unemployment.
Canada's economy is sliding dramatically.
Navigating this economy has never been more confusing or frustrating, and we are here to help with that. I'm Jordan Heath Rawlings, and this is Today in This Economy, where we keep you informed about what the latest economic news means for you. New data from the Office of the Superintendent of Bankruptcy, and yes, that is a necessary, sadly, government office, shows that levels of consumer insolvency filings in Canada are approaching record highs. In some provinces, like Ontario, they are well beyond that. So today we want to explore why that's happening, how to know if you're getting close to that edge, and what you can do to prepare yourself. I'm here with Doug Hoyes, who is a licensed insolvency trustee and the co-founder of Hoyes Michael Associates Incorporated. Hello, Doug.
Hello, good to be with you.
Thank you. I guess I wish we had better news to talk about today.
Well, unfortunately, yes, I'm of the view that we're in a recession, and it's not a surprise that unemployment rates are rising. And when both of those things are true, it means that consumer insolvencies are rising, and I suspect that's what you want to discuss today.
It is, in fact, but I'm going to start with the most basic question. What is a consumer insolvency? How do we define that?
So being insolvent means one of two things. It either means I can't pay my bills as they come due. So that's the cash flow definition. And the other definition would be the asset definition. My debts are bigger than my liabilities. Now, that's what insolvency is. Bankruptcy is a specific subset of that. So we hear on the news all the time, oh, the government of Canada is spending so much money, they're bankrupt. Well, no, they aren't. You have to formally file for bankruptcy to become bankrupt. So in Canada, we have two legal forms of insolvency for people, for individuals, a consumer proposal and a bankruptcy. And I think people understand what a bankruptcy is. Okay, I lose my stuff. I think that's what a bankruptcy is. In a consumer proposal, we go to the people you owe money to and we say, hey, let's make a deal. I owe you $50,000 on my credit cards, bank loans, income taxes, payday loans, whatever it is. I can't pay it all back, but I can pay some of it back. So here's my proposal. I'll pay $300 a month for the next 5 years. That's $18,000. And the creditors agree that, well, that's better than bankruptcy.
Right.
So we accept that deal. So in Canada, those are the two the two legal forms of consumer insolvency.
What do we know about the way insolvency is trending in Canada? You mentioned at the top, it's not looking good. Where is it at right now? How does that compare historically? How are we doing?
It's going up. So if you were to draw a chart, the peak in consumer insolvencies in Canada happened in the 2008-2009 period. And those of us who are old will remember that was the big credit crisis, a lot of stuff happening around the world. That was the peak in consumer insolvency filings in Canada. And then we had a period of about 10 years where they were falling. Things were getting better. They went lower, lower, lower. They were starting to trend upwards in 2018 and 2019. And then again, if you're a history buff, you will remember 2020 when everything shut down. So the insolvency rate in Canada almost immediately dropped by about 50%. Because the reason you would file a consumer proposal or a bankruptcy, it's not just that you got a lot of debt. It's like, oh, I don't want the creditors taking me to court, suing me and garnishing my wages. Well, if you're not working, they can't garnish your wages. If the court is closed, they can't go to court and sue you. So we had an immediate massive drop in the number of people filing. And of course, we also had government stimulus checks and things like that kept people going. So we had a massive drop, and then it was around 2022, 2023 that the numbers started to increase. Well, by the middle of 2024, the number of consumer insolvencies being filed are now back to and above where they were in 2019. So they're not as high as they were in 2008, 2009. We're getting close, but they're not there yet. But they are certainly higher than they were in 2019. and they are trending definitely higher.
Why is that happening? What do we know about what's causing them?
The main factor is stuff costs more.
Right.
That's my economist definition of it. So you go to the grocery store and you see that over the last 4 years, according to Statistics Canada, food prices are up 24%. Now, a bunch of stuff I buy seems to be up more than that. For most people, their income has not gone up by that same amount. So our expenses are going up faster than our income. How do you bridge the gap? Well, you try to spend a bit less, but there's only so much you can do. You still need to eat food and have some place to live. And the way sometimes you bridge the gap is through debt. I put it on my credit card. I borrow. And so our debt levels have been increasing. And if you were to draw the graph of Canadian credit card balances, it's straight up. It had a big drop again during 2020, 2021 as we all kind of deleveraged, but it's again way back higher than it was at any time in Canadian history. So our debt levels are higher, our incomes are not higher. And of course, we had the interest rates, which went really low in 2020, have come back up. They've eased off a bit since then. So if you are carrying debt, the cost of carrying that debt is a lot higher. And then the final piece of the puzzle is unemployment. There's a very direct correlation between people getting into financial trouble and unemployment. That's pretty obvious. If I don't have a job, I can't service my debt, pay my bills. So you combine all those things, and that's why we're seeing a big jump in consumer insolvency filings.
So you've got the numbers for people who actually file for insolvency. Do we have any concept of like how many people are precariously close to that? Is there a window in which like you're most at risk of this? Do we know how many people are right on the edge?
There's no way to know the answer to that question specifically, but anecdotally, I would say it's a lot of people. And I guess if you were to do a poll of your listeners and ask them, well, what would happen if you missed your next paycheck? And if the answer is, I'd be in a lot of trouble, then you know that people are on the line. And I would guess that it is a significant percentage of the population that is 1 or 2 paychecks away from a serious problem. Now, that doesn't mean they're 1 or 2 paychecks away from bankruptcy, but again, ask yourself that question. If something got messed up with my next paycheck, do I have enough extra cash in the bank that I could still pay my rent at the start of the month, buy my groceries, put gas in the car, buy my bus fare, whatever? And for a lot of people, the answer is no, because we have zero savings. Not everybody. There's some people who are doing fabulously well. And I think that's really a big part of the story. There's a small chunk of the population that's doing fantastic. The last 5 years have been great. House prices have gone up. The stock market has gone way up. Crypto, everything you buy, gold, it's all at record highs. It's fantastic. So if you had assets when the events of 2020 started, you've done great. But if you didn't, you haven't benefited from that big increase. And worse, you've had to incur debt to survive. So the people who are in that second category are the people who are living on the edge. And those people, there's certainly a lot more of them than there were a few years ago.
So if I'm one of those people, I ask myself that question about missing my next paycheck, and the answer is, yeah, I'd be pretty boned. I'm clearly right next to it. What do I do in that sense before I end up insolvent?
Well, I think the first step is exactly what you just said, is to recognize which direction the train is heading. And so if I know that I'm in a various precarious situation, what can I do today to head it off at the pass? Now, it's easy to talk about, it's hard to do. The obvious solutions are, well, is there any way I can increase my income? So you go talk to the boss, see if you can get a raise. Well, that may not work. If unemployment's high, then the boss is less likely to want to give you a raise. What I'm seeing a ton of people are doing is having a side hustle, a second job, doing something on the side, whether it's food delivery or working retail or working at the bar on the weekends or whatever. So increasing your income, if possible, is one thing. And then the other thing is to do whatever you can to reduce your expenses. So fine, I'll give up my car and I'll take transit. I'll bring in a roommate to split the rent. If you start those processes now and can reduce your debt and perhaps build up some savings, then when that event occurs, you do lose your job, for example. Well, if you've got a bit of a cushion, you can weather the storm. So don't wait until you are unemployed to freshen up your resume. Don't wait till you're unemployed to try to figure out a way to start money. It's something you want to do well in advance. Be proactive.
We had a guest on a couple weeks ago after the last interest rate cut who predicted at least a couple more cuts, some of them perhaps even by, 50 percentage points. Is that going to help with this? Like you mentioned, you're still seeing them rising, but interest rates have been dropping.
Yes, and again, it will help some people, but take the example of the person who got a mortgage at the absolute best time when they could lock in for like 1.4% for a 3, 4, 5-year mortgage. Well, those people's mortgages are now coming due or will be coming up for renewal in 2025, 2026. Even if interest rates have dropped a couple of points, they're still going to be paying potentially a couple of points more than what they had originally. And we're already seeing it with people who had variable interest rate mortgages, for example. They went up right away. They're easing back a bit. But to go from a 2% mortgage to even a 4% mortgage interest rate is a massive increase. Now, it's not double the way amortizations work, but it's a big thing. And I've met with tons of people who are paying $1,000, $2,000, even more per month on their mortgage. So unless your paycheck has gone up by that much, it's not going to make a difference. So the answer to your question is, well, if my mortgage payment went up by $2,000 and then with lower interest rates, it comes down by $500, I'm still a lot worse off than I was 2, 3, 4 years ago. It's kind of like inflation. Oh, inflation's only 2% now. That's great. Yeah. All that means is prices are only going up by 2%. It doesn't mean they're coming down. All those previous price increases are still captured into it. So unless we see a massive drop in interest rates really quickly, I don't expect it's going to make a huge difference. The other thing is there's a massive time lag here. If I eat a bag of chocolate chip cookies, I feel great. If I eat a bag every day, it takes about, 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years before I'm really, really sick. So we are in that phase where things feel good when the rates are coming down, but it takes a long time to filter its way through the economy. So I don't expect to see any massive changes in anything in the short term, even if interest rates do come down.
Okay, so I really appreciate you walking us through all this. I'll leave you with one quick question now for people who are in this situation, who are listening. When do they make the call to come and see someone like you? Like, what's the tipping point where you need to step in and work with them?
Well, the tipping point is different for a lot of people, but if you're missing, you can't even make your monthly payments or you're missing payments, that's an obvious tipping point. If you're getting calls from collection agents, if you've got unopened emails and mails with all the bills that are coming in, then that's definitely a tipping point. My advice to people, though, is if you think you have a problem, then reach out to a licensed insolvency trustee now. It's by law, we're not allowed to charge anything for that initial chat, so there's no obligation to it. It's kind of like if you have a medical problem. Well, reach out to the doctor now. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe you can deal with it on your own. But debt problems do not get better on their own. That's not the way it works. So the sooner you jump on it, reach out for help, the more likely it is a satisfactory solution can be worked out sooner rather than later.
Doug, thank you so much for this. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
That was Today in This Economy. And if you have an idea for an episode or a personal finance question, we want to hear from you. To get in touch with us, email hello@itepod.ca, or you can call us at 416-935-5935 and leave us a voicemail. But if you'd like us to play your voicemail on the show, you got to tell us that, because we won't run your audio without your permission. This episode was produced by Robin Simon with sound design by Matt Kesselman. Stephanie Phillips is our showrunner. Mary Jubrin is our audience development lead. Diana Kay is our business manager. And I'm Jordan Heath-Rawlings, your host and your executive producer. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you next week.